It's been a while. I'm not here to take you today. We will meet again soon, but today is not that day, dear viewer. I'm here to talk to you about the death of the Earth, caused by my favorite death denialists, insanely rich people. They really do try very hard to squeeze every last drop of the environment before tossing it in the trash can. And then, of course, they've learned all of the tricks to get a good portion of the American Christian population to form an identity around climate denial, using all sorts of mental suggestions and Bible gymnastics to maintain their influence, gaining even more power with impunity. In the end, though, I fear their legacy is all for naught. They can't really escape their fate. So pull up a chair and let me tell you about climate change and Dominionism. When I think of American politics and climate change, I can't help remembering watching the film First Reformed, where Ethan Hawke plays a parishioner in upstate New York that is coming up on its 250th anniversary of being built. The movie follows him on a journey of discovering how the church plays its role in perpetuating climate denial, while also accepting generous donations from its oil-producing congregants. In doing so, the movie asks us whether the destruction of our environment is a fair price to pay in order to line the pockets of the clergy. Before I go any further on this topic, I want to say that this denialism is by no means a consensus among Protestants, evangelicals, and Catholics. A Pew Research study found that much of the dividing line of acceptance of man-made climate change came down to political leanings. There are countless faith-based organizations doing the work necessary in order to fight against climate change. So try to avoid unloading your climate grief on your church-going grandmother who loves you and just wants you to be happy. In this video, I'll be focusing on how the Christian right sows doubt about climate change within their churches on Capitol Hill, and why this is one of the more dangerous affiliations in a time when we need aggressive climate action taken against the world's most infamous polluters. I want to make a note. When I say Christian right, I mean Christian right thought leaders. And so Adam cursed the earth. When I read articles and books on this topic, there is a theme that consistently occurs, giving light to what attitudes the Christian right espouses when it comes to climate change and global warming. The thought process goes, Earth is wilderness, and we humans are unlocking its potential. We are charged to subdue it, because God asks us to in Genesis. And even if hypothetically Earth is breaking under the yoke, it's inevitable and there's nothing we can do to stop it. God will return one day. Until then, we must do everything we can to subdue the Earth. We first need to acknowledge that the evangelical vote is powerful. It has not lost relevancy, and ever since Jerry Falwell sidled up to Ronald Reagan in the long ago, has been a major force within the GOP.
No, Jerry Falwell's ghost, fuck you!
The election in 2016, 2018, and 2020 reaffirmed this point, and regardless of what the evangelical cats believe the GOP is doing for them, the GOP continues to actively ignore and strike down legislation that broaches any drastic action towards climate policy. So, what biblical passages assure the Christian right of their belief that God is in control and climate change is a deterministic threat already outlined in prophecy? There are many passages in the Bible that discuss a curse being put upon the earth, but it's important to distinguish between the 7 last plagues of Revelation and the canonical curse that began taking hold of the earth after the fall of man. There are examples in both the Old and New Testament of a cursed earth under sin. But the 4th plague is distinct in execution because it takes place in succession after the angel of judgment has sounded their trumpet. I don't make the rules. I'm just a messenger. And since the entire ocean has not yet been turned into coagulated blood, I highly doubt climate change has anything to do with the 4th plague. The text that biblical scholars use and consider to be determined proof of biblical predictions of climate change are from Isaiah 24:5 and 6, reading from King James. The earth is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. The story within the Bible goes that one man fell, he released a curse of sin upon the earth, manifesting in a myriad of different forms of destruction especially. Basically, the person who caused climate change according to the Bible was man himself, and his choice to sin and break the everlasting covenant. Whatever that is. Brighter Than You. In his 2007 article, Brian McCormack lays out the intra-faith struggle in evangelical circles when it comes down to how to approach policy on climate change. Much of the dialogue focuses on 2 distinct interpretations of human dominionism as laid out in Genesis 1:28. Liberal evangelical environmentalists couple this text with Matthew 20, essentially claiming that while man has been given dominion over the earth, we must behave like Jesus and serve the earth for the betterment of our brothers and sisters. Conservative, evangelical environmentalists claim that they are under no obligation whatsoever to improve the earth as stated in an online screed. The biblical perspective of environmental stewardship, subduing and ruling the earth to the glory of God and the benefit of our neighbors. Written by the Cornwall Alliance. That's a very long-winded way of saying we don't want to do anything about climate change. Point 9 in this manifesto states that we affirm that by God's design, Earth and its physical and biological systems are robust, resilient, and self-correcting. Nowhere in the article is there a statement about who we is. I am laboring under the assumption that we is meant to be those that run the Cornwall Alliance. The article was written by E. Calvin Beisner, founder and shill of Cornwall, who received a doctorate in Scottish studies and has no education grounded in anything remotely scientific. One other thing I'd like to point out about this manifesto is that there is an affirmation later in the text that states, we affirm that because of man's fall into sin, sinful hearts often fall prey to materialism. the covetous love of money, and the selfish accumulation of possessions. From Luke, Timothy, and Colossians, they follow that statement up with, we deny that the temptation to materialist idolatry entails that the production of wealth, whether material from the earth or immaterial from the human mind, is sinful in and of itself. How fucking convenient. The Cornwall Alliance is an iteration of the Interfaith Stewardship Alliance, which in turn is an iteration of the Interfaith Council for Environmental Stewardship. It appears as though this think tank has to change its name constantly in order to avoid detection. Curious. The Cornwall Alliance mirrors the likes of the Heartland Institute, Cato, and other such dark money-funded think tanks in what type of messages it propagates, but with a slightly Christian bent. I really do not want to continue outlining what these think tanks do because it's really all bullshit anyway. So in an effort to be succinct, I'll say these special interest groups have a lot of pull in public policy, more so than the American electorate. Another argument used by the Christian right posits that while liberal evangelicals' goal of helping those most vulnerable countries from the more destructive aspects of climate change is a good goal and is a nice sentiment, this is actually a bad goal because these liberal evangelicals don't understand how they could be economically impacting those developing countries, primarily by reducing demand for certain kinds of resources, just off the top of our heads, like oil, raw materials, farmland for various crops. When I am reminded how people are dying because the life-sustaining environment around them is collapsing, I always tell them how being able to economically develop themselves is much more important than surviving, because just these people need to stand on their own 2 feet, and they're never going to do that if they're constantly asking for help and rescuing. They need to stand on their own 2 feet for a change. And I won't let any nanny state tell me how I'm going to buy from these nations. The whole argument made by the Christian right is a cop-out. You know it, I know it, they know it. The argument most often applied to the Christian right is one where the earth is in no real danger after all. God is in control. Science is blasphemous anyway. I am fucking disappointed in the amount of bullshit I'm seeing here. The infinite grift. But none of this really matters to the followers of this movement. Why? Because thinking about the reality of climate change is nothing if not depressing, painful, and mentally burdensome. Hope has been commodified, and we continually perpetuate the system that will ultimately destroy us. Who wants that? It's easier to continue with your own little life and believe that God in all his wisdom and omnipotence wouldn't let anything really bad happen, right? Besides, the real truth is that climate change is a demonic liberal lie perpetuated by a global elite trying to control us and turn our little lighthouse of democracy into a beacon of totalitarian nightmares. They're just preparing you for a new world order. Follow me on an eagle's eye journey through this entire movement and mentality as it breaks down like the intentional spread of a virus. One infected person goes into a crowded place. In this instance, a church. A portion of the group gets infected, goes home, and infects a portion of their family and friends. Imagine you're an infected member of the group that caught it at church. You look up more information about what you caught, but because you lack the critical thinking skills to discern truth from lies, you choose to act based on what you feel, which is based on your identity, and you end up misdiagnosing the problem. The virus won't go away, and initial remedies didn't work. You learn that the issue you have is more complicated from people like Alex Jones, and that it was all manufactured by the left to make you sick, so you give up your freedom to the New World Order. This scares you, and what eases that anxiety is buying his Pro-Elite 1 supplements. The placebo effect is really strong, but the feeling never lasts, and you keep finding more sources to help you justify what you believe is right and good, because you know you're not wrong. How could you be? Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Dave Rubin, David Icke, Dennis Prager, Donald Trump, they're all telling you you're right. So how could they be wrong? You drop in on Facebook, and sure enough, it looks like a lot of your family and most of your friends have caught the virus too. But don't worry, your friend Shelly from high school is on Facebook, and she's been posting about dietary supplements called Nutrilite. She says Nutrilite has been a big game changer in the holistic and wellness community. And she, of course, Shelly that is, exudes confidence about the growth of their MLM, and it convinces you to help them start selling life-saving medication. You switch from Alex Jones's Elite Pro 1 supplements to Nutrilite, Double X multivitamins, and also decide to become an Amway supplier yourself. You get to be your own boss for a change. It's a great deal, and you're helping people keep themselves safe without the government's approval. I mean, we all know the FDA is a government bureaucracy, and the government is the one trying to push for more control. Besides, God is watching you and continually blessing you with new opportunities. He knows all, so this must be a blessing. Meanwhile, a Betsy DeVos type cuts a check to some investment group, let's say Donors Trust, before returning to her day job of tearing apart America's secular education system and moving government revenue to private Christian schools and administrations. Donors Trust, a group that assures that conservative money will continue going to conservative causes after those conservative donors are dead, runs that sweet, sweet Amway cash, or cock money, through their patented process and donates millions to propaganda think tanks like, say, Cornwall Alliance for the Stewardship of Creation, or the more famous ALEC. This generous donation is then used in a variety of ways, either through funding the campaigns of loyal political representatives, anywhere from City Hall to Capitol Hill, funding lavish conferences and getaways for Republicans already elected, this being in an effort to massage pro-oil legislation, or slipping a generous donation to the church to continue expanding its ministry, or, in some cases, bullying the fucking Pope for taking a stand against man-made climate change. And so it goes that this hyper beast continually pumps bullshit through every crevice of our nation because it was built over time for the sole purpose of making the most morally bankrupt versions of humanity insanely powerful. There's more, but you get the gist. It's all a giant grift in order to sustain the Christian rights way of life and its stranglehold on American democracy. Why? Many reasons, but here's one. Communism. What the fuck do we do? How do we exist? We legislate against dark money groups and overturn Citizens United. Then we elect representatives that have progressive platforms and are all for using the Treasury in order to enhance our education system and to help those who are most vulnerable. I know it doesn't initially seem relevant, but I was thinking about our education system and critical thinking when I wrote the script for the Eschaton of QAnon back in September. Without critical thinking, we live in a world of radicalization. We should never do good things because we're expecting to get something in return for it. We do it to help build a foundation for a future where people don't have to suffer the same mistakes we made and that we had to experience. We do it so that people don't have to sit on their phones, doom scrolling, as their democracy falls apart. We make these decisions not because we see that it will bear fruit while we are still alive, but that maybe in the future, those generations won't have to deal with what we had to deal with. It's the reason our grandparents fought the Nazis, and it's why we need to fight the fascists of today. So with that in mind, would you like to spend the rest of your life thinking about the next time you'll meet death? Or perhaps fight for a future where people don't have to spend every waking second of their lives worrying about when they're going to die?